Okay, we're going to be talking about the Revolutionary War battles in as little as 20 minutes. So, as we get into it, here are the places that we need to know as important places for battles and events during the Revolutionary War. Okay, first off, we're going to have Boston, Massachusetts. Okay, it's an important port city that is very important to trade and shipping. As we're talking about the New England states and the Middle states, there's going to be Saratoga on the Hudson River. There's going to be Long Island outside of New York City. There's going to be Valley Forge. Outside of Philadelphia. Trenton. Yorktown. And Charleston, down here near the Savannah River. Okay, this is the quick version of the Revolutionary War. As we're talking about this, we need to understand who is fighting, okay? It is a Civil War-like atmosphere, but when we're talking about loyalists, we may also be talking about British soldiers, okay? People that were enlisted in the British Navy or the Army that were going to help put down the rebellion in the colonies. So let's start talking about patriots first. Patriots made a lot of money through shipment because the English government worked kind of like a gigantic version of Walmart, okay? Shipping and sell of goods. That's one of the loyalist strengths, is the ability to get anywhere quickly, kind of like Amazon today. Fast shipping. They also had power underneath the king. At that point, it was King George III, okay? And they had enormous amount of supplies and training. This would be like a third-degree black belt, if we were putting it into a modern context that's easily to understand, okay? On the reverse side, we have patriots. Patriots are arguing that existing as part of the mercantilist kind of company structure that is the British government at that point actually isn't necessary. People like Benjamin Franklin make the claim that they could unite as colonies. They are making the claim that they could exist on their own without excessive taxation from the British. One of the arguments of this is, hopefully in your class, you've talked about the role of Parliament and the connection to the king and decision-making power that the upper and lower houses have. So in England, you might have the upper house of Parliament connected right to the king. They can make decisions. But in the colonial structure, it's not connected as a lower house. It would almost be like 3,000 miles away. That the lower houses would be trying to be represented by Parliament. And this just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you needed things done quickly and had to wait 3 months for a decision to be made, then it wouldn't be very fair to you, especially if you're expected to pay taxes. So many people in Boston, okay, there are the Sons of Liberty, which is a patriot group, are going to be fed up with the king's practices, as well as monopolies on things like tea, and they're going to throw the Boston Tea Party. After the Boston Tea Party, after the Boston Tea Party, They are going to set up a blockade as punishment for the Boston Tea Party. The British government is going to use its fast ships and essentially shut down trade coming out of Boston. This would kind of be like shutting off the internet today or closing access to Amazon. People are going to be mad and they're going to feel that their rights are wholly violated. So, on the Patriot side, in order to protect people's rights, liberty, their property, okay, they are going to choose George Washington as commander-in-chief. And George Washington is going to have the task of training young troops, okay, and getting supplies to fight this long war against the British. Because the long war against the British is going to be a war of attrition, meaning that they need to outlast the British until the British are going to give up. So it's going to be attacking from the sides and then pushing the British away. Outside of Boston, Washington is going to take stolen cannons from a place called Fort Ticonderoga, and they are going to free Boston and push the British away. This is the siege of Boston, but it begins with like the Battle of Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill in order to protect the people of Boston. It is the first major victory of the war that gets the British to back away a little bit, okay? But the British, again, have fast ships this whole entire time. The British can always just take their ships, go down the coast, or hold back a little bit and attack at another point. Washington's main goal is to protect the people where they are at. So Washington is going to need to meet the British at Long Island, outside of New York City, and he's going to need to protect the people of New York City in order to kind of live up to his promise as commander-in-chief. It is a tremendous loss for Washington, okay? But it's not because of being outmaneuvered and out like kind of trained. It's being outmanned and outgunned. So after Long Island, okay, it is going to be an enormous loss where Washington begins a long retreat of running away. It's going to be that Washington is being chased by the British and pretty much have to crisscross this Delaware River. As he's running away, he has opportunities to gain supplies. They can gain supplies only by stealing them. And stealing them is going to be oftentimes in hit and run tactics. Now, imagine after the third time of somebody scaring you, you're going to be privy to whatever ambush that they set up. A lot of the time, these hit and run tactics are going to become hit and miss, okay? Washington's going to try a hit and run tactic at night, and it's going to work sometimes, but it's not going to work all the time. But at the Battle of Trenton, he surprises the Hessian mercenaries, people that are getting paid to fight for the British. And he is going to capture a lot of war supplies. But Washington has to continue hit and run tactics or hit and miss. Some of these are going to be like the Battle of Princeton, which is a success. The Battle of Germantown and Brandywine is not a success. There is a British general that is tasked with chasing down Washington this whole entire time, and it is one of our loyalists, a guy by the name of General Howe. He has a brother Howe that is in charge of the British ships, so Admiral Howe. So General Howe, not his brother Admiral, is going to see that Washington is trying to protect these major cities, and winter is coming. And instead of spending it out in an open field and having to make camp, Howe sees an opportunity in Philadelphia. He's going to occupy Philadelphia and sit outside Philadelphia for a long moment in time. And he is going to have the opportunity to rest and train his troops. Washington needs to rest and train, but he also needs to heal. So Washington is going to go outside of Philadelphia to Valley Forge. This allows him to keep an eye on Philadelphia to make sure that Howe isn't doing too many bad things to the people of Philly, as well as it gives him, in a sense, a natural fortress because he is up in the hills and he can see if Howe is about to attack. He does get some help during this time. They have a guy named Baron von Steuben, okay, that is going to give Washington the skills to train his troops. For example, he's going to train 100 men, who's going to train 100 men, and they are going to be very helpful in training Washington's army in how to fight the European way. So, Valley Forge, time to heal, plus train. Both armies right here that are kind of like Washington's group, they're going to spend this winter just kind of hanging out. And this is over the course of a couple years, but this is one specific year, okay? 1777 or 8 to 79. But again, I kind of get them mixed up too. Okay. At the same time, Washington has conflict outside of Trenton with a guy named Horatio Gates, another general for the American Army. He is the guy that tried to invade Quebec, or at least sent people. It didn't work out. But Horatio Gates is going to want to go and again, hit and run tactics to Saratoga in order to try and free up the Hudson River, a river that they've been competing for this entire time because the British have fast shipping lanes, and this would allow them to expand their area of control. So Gates and his army are going to be chased by the British as well. And they meet up outside of Saratoga. So Saratoga is an area of land with lots of hills, valleys, and especially trees. And in these forest paths, there's an opportunity. And a guy named Kosciuszko, another mercenary, sees this opportunity and he says, okay, if you chop down trees in front of the path and then attack from the sides as the British are trying to deal with those trees, this gives you an opportunity to win the battle. With Kosciuszko's guidance, Horatio Gates is able to win at Saratoga. And there are some battles in between, and Horatio Gates is eventually kind of pushed off to the side of the war for a little bit. But the British, after Saratoga, are going to have a new strategy of leaving the north while Howe is still camped outside of Philadelphia. And they're going to want to attack the south. By attacking the south, they're going to be able to get more loyalists to their side. In the south, there's going to be loyalists, kind of like a guy named Tarleton. They're cash crop owners. They're plantation owners. They have a lot of slaves, and they're going to want to keep their wealth, okay? So the British are in the south, and as they're in the south, they're going to want to push up from these rivers, like the Charleston River, and eventually start pushing north while gaining local support in an effort to defeat the Patriots once and for all. Washington understands that this is happening and begins to send people south in the hopes that they could defeat the British, but also this is where the cat and mouse game kind of starts, okay? Washington needs time at Valley Forge. He gets it. And he starts this cat and mouse game, kind of like Tom and Jerry, where the British are the cat and he is the mouse. and he continually runs away. This is the same thing that's going to be in the South, okay, after the British attack at Charleston. And they are all heading to this one spot, Yorktown. There's going to be a British general down in the South named Cornwallis, okay? And the way to remember Cornwallis is that Cornwallis is walled in. After Saratoga, and here's how he's walled in, people begin to notice that the Americans could actually win this war. They called Saratoga the turning point of the war. It's about midway. So, about midway through the war, okay? And other countries that have a mercantilist system that want to compete with Great Britain's fast shipping, okay, these would be like the Target versus Walmart, are going to be France and Spain. They are going to want to send troops to go help out at Yorktown in order to try and push the British into one final battle, okay? And yeah, it's not necessarily pushing, it is cat and mouse, but they do outmaneuver the British, where Cornwallis is walled in to this town of Yorktown, okay? It's where the French are going to have support. But hopefully you remember, the British, this entire time, have fast ships, and these fast ships always are acting kind of as an escape. So, fast ships from the south are going to move up the coast as an escape for the British. As Cornwallis is hoping that these ships are here, it's then that France, okay, truly enters the war on the American side and destroys the French escape fleet, or the British escape fleet. Okay, Washington and his troops capture 7,000 British, and this is effective enough that support in England really lags for the war. Okay, that's pretty much the whole war in 20 minutes. Okay, thanks.